Yeah, if you've got if one's in the back and you go higher,
just a little bit higher, yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
You can peek your head around
Yeah.
all the way.
Yeah. Just open to, yeah, exactly. All right, we have our speaker. Representative over there. And if you're not speaking, you are just kind of get in close behind the shot. We would.
Hi, good.
So you're going to be just where they can see you.
Oh, flip. Okay. I'm gonna go over to this side.
You are a tall guy. You can see right behind me, and they would still see you.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what I want you to see. How big my heels are.
Thank you.
And you are still
I know,
a
I know.
whole head taller than
I should have worn heels.
Yeah. We should try.
I think everyone take a half step.
Okay.
Yep, ready to roll.
All right, sir. Floor is yours. Everyone go down. All right, thank you guys. Wait, hang on.
I'd like to welcome everyone who has joined us here this morning. Good morning. My name is W. Robert Schultz III. I use public transit for 100% of my trips, and I am a campaign organizer at the Active Transportation Alliance. I live in Belmont-Cragen, where public transit options are not as robust as elsewhere in the city. You have all heard about ghost trains and ghost buses that either show up late or don't show up at all. As a campaign organizer, I've had conversations with hundreds of riders who share the same frustrations I have when service delivery on the streets and train platforms is so chaotic, unpredictable, and challenging that it's difficult to plan your day utilizing public transportation. I've heard the same story dozens of times. People like me from elsewhere in the country moved to Chicagoland due to its reputation of an excellent transportation system. It's only once you've lived in the city that you find out how impossible it is to be a city resident to take advantage of suburban job opportunities due to the lack of dependable city-to-suburb connections by public transportation. When it comes to public transportation in northeastern Illinois, it's all about being ghosted by services, and frequently there is none, for instance, overnight. But the truth is, the state of Illinois has been ghosting transit funding for years. Not only do our transit agencies face a $730 million transit funding cliff in 2026 when federal pandemic funds run out, but we must invest more to restore the train and bus routes all over northeastern Illinois that have been cut over the last decade. We need more frequent, more reliable transit to attract more riders and make the system work for everyone who needs to get to work, get to school, and to get home. That lack of funding means CTA and Metra are behind their sister agencies in other states in recovering from the pandemic. It's why nearly half of Chicago voters give CTA a negative rating. Too often, buses and trains are not on time, not clean, and sometimes not as safe as they can be. We have a responsibility to do better. I'd like to introduce State Representative Mary Beth Canty.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert, and thank you, everyone, for being here. As Robert said, I'm Mary Beth Canty. I am the state representative for the eastern part of Palatine, the northern part of Arlington Heights, half of Prospect Heights, and then small part of Buffalo Grove, Wheeling, and Mount Prospect. I am also a former member of the RTA board, and I joined there in July 2020 at the height of the pandemic. What I was struck by when I was on that board was the lack of control that the RTA had over the region. When you talked about the budget, when you talked about the work, there wasn't a way for the RTA to require the 3 service agencies to work together. You either passed their budgets or you didn't. For example, the CTA, Metra, and PACE all have separate apps that don't work well together or don't work together at all, forcing people to juggle multiple apps, multiple schedules, and separate fares that just don't work as well as they should. What my constituents want is to hop on a train to take in a game or a show, have a seamless transition to a bus or an L, pay 1 fare, and arrive at their destination on time. They want to take transit to get from Arlington Heights to Schaumburg or to get to school at Harper College. But those suburb to suburb bus routes were cut years ago, and the regional connectivity just isn't happening. That's why, if you ask voters if they support unifying the CTA, Metra, PACE, and RTA into one agency, voters across Illinois support that idea by a 2-to-1 margin. By margins of 54 to 27% in Chicago, 49 to 21% in suburban Cook County, and 53 to 19% in the collar counties. The data shows us that efforts to pit the city of Chicago against the Cook County suburbs and the collar counties are not working. The overwhelming majority of voters in Chicago, Cook County, and the collar counties don't want to hear parochial political arguments. They want solutions. Making transit cleaner, safer, and more frequent is what riders and taxpayers want, not the present system that stands in the way of regional connectivity and financial inefficiency. And now I would like to introduce my colleague, Representative Eva Delgado.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eva Delgado. I represent the northwest side of the city of Chicago, including the neighborhoods of Belmont Cragen, Hermosa, Logan Square, and Wicker Park. I'm also the chief house sponsor of the Metropolitan Mobility Act, or the MMA Act, as we lovingly call it. I also want to start off today by saying that this is now day 3 that I have not had to get in my car. And I am so much happier for it. And I'd also like to thank all of the men and women who got me here safely and without incident on the Blue Line. Thank you so much. I'm sure they will be able to get me home just as safely and just as reliably. But I want to talk about real solutions and real solutions to the problems that my colleague here has just talked about. People want to see real solutions. They don't want to see Band-Aids, and they don't want to see a failed status quo. 72% of the people who were surveyed want to stop building new roads, and instead invest in transit, invest in bikes, invest in the infrastructure that allows mobility to be able to continue without having to jump in a car. And the MMA is a major step forward for that policy, and it gets to what the vast majority of most Illinois voters want. The MMA will unify CTA, PACE, Metra, and RTA into one better functioning, more efficient, and more effective transit agency that provides seamless apps, seamless schedules, and seamless fares. It's just common sense. Our transit agencies face a $730 million funding cliff, and legislators in Springfield have said very clearly that there will be no new revenue unless there is real reform. While states like Pennsylvania and Massachusetts spend 40 to 50% of their dollars, let me make that clear. While states like Pennsylvania and Massachusetts fund 40 to 50% of transit, Illinois just funds 17%. And that's just one reason why the CTA and Metra are struggling to get their service back up after the pandemic. The first step to increasing state funding is unifying these 4 transit agencies into one system. This is going to save taxpayer dollars, and it's going to deliver better service. The companion appropriation bill to the MMA calls for $1.5 billion in annual funding. That will not only solve the transit funding cliff in 2026, but it will vastly improve frequency, reliability, interconnectedness, and safety on the public transit system in northeastern Illinois. Our voters, our riders, our businesses, and our economic future demands a far better transit system than what the status quo offers. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Senator Robert Peters.
Good morning. My name is Senator Robert Peters. My first name's not Senator, it's Robert. I represent folks that stretch down from the Indiana border all the way up to the Gold Coast. It includes working class neighborhoods like South Chicago. It includes some of our richest neighborhoods like Streeterville. And what it includes is people across the board who understand that we need a better, safer transit system. If you look at this poll, it found that 72% of voters found unifying the 4 agencies and eliminating up to $250 million per year in duplicate efforts a convincing argument to pass the MMA. We have a real opportunity to combine these services. We are a world-class city that deserves world-class transit, and right now it is too defined by people too connected to their little fiefdoms, and it's not helping the people who need to get downtown or get to the suburbs or get from one place to another. And to me, when I talk about what it means to have safety, one of the more foundational things is being able to get from point A to point B. And it's clear that the public sees this. In fact, I'm the chair of labor. I care deeply about what working class people feel. And when we look at this poll, labor households are 48 to 19 in support of a safer, more efficient system that comes from the MMA. These same agencies are about to appear across the state at the Cook County Board, to us here, to present their budgets. I doubt that riders or taxpayers want millions of public tax dollars spent on lobbyists, lobbying for a failed status quo. They want change. As you know, as you heard from Rep. Eva Delgado, there's no new funding that doesn't come without these changes. We need to unify this system. I was, recently, about a year ago in Germany. I was in Hamburg, and I was just in awe. I was awed because they have this sort of unified system. They have high union density. They have folks who are getting onto that system, hopping off, hopping on. I think that if we're the richest country in the world and the 3rd largest city in that country, that we should have the richest, most robust public transit system possible. I think what makes this city special is its unique diversity. What makes this region special, 9 million people should be able to feel connected. And I think coming out of the pandemic, more and more people feel isolated. They feel like they're left out. There is something about sharing a train or a bus. And I'll just say this, and I'll end on this. I think that if someone's riding a PACE bus to get to work at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, which is in my district, let's say they're a healthcare worker, they take the PACE bus. They should know that they're going to be able to get to work relatively easily. They should know they're going to get there on time. They should know that they're going to be safe. At the same time, that bus driver should be paid the same as a CTA bus driver. And currently, how this system sets up, it pits a PACE bus driver against a CTA bus driver. That's not efficient, it's not fair, it's not a good system. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who want to stick to the failed status quo. You might get something cushy out of it. You might be a little bit scared. But what I can tell you is we do amazing things in Chicago. We've got a lot done in Chicago. This is small compared to many things we can do in the city of Chicago. So I think for the Chicagoland region, or for the Midwest or the Northwest Illinois region, we can have the finest public transportation system possible. And the way to do that is by unifying it. Thank you. Oh, we will take your questions now if there are any questions. Don't hold back. No, thank you guys.